2. Hi, this is Deanna Kosaraju, founder of Global Tech Women, and we are on the final day of Voices 2017. And this is a very special last day of Voices. This is really going to be looking at you and your professional development, your personal development, how you can thrive as a leader and as an individual, as a human being. So I hope you enjoy the sessions all day today. And we're going to start out with Ann Meixner, who is the founder of The Engineer's Daughter, and I'm sure she'll talk to you a little bit about what that is. If you're on the Global Tech Women Facebook group, you know what that is because you read her blog posts. So I'm hoping that you'll join her on her site as well. And she's going to be talking about how we can demystify the corporate technical ladder. You know, there's a lot of unwritten rules, unsaid rules about how you advance in a corporation. And she's going to talk about her personal experiences as well as experiences from others and some of the research and data around that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ann.
Thank you, Deanna. I'm looking forward to presenting this information to people today. Right? Why isn't it going forward? There we go. Okay, so the outline of the presentation is we're going to have an overview, just quickly discuss, hey, what's a promotion path? What's a technical ladder? And then I want to make a case for thinking of promotions in terms of a four-legged stool. And then I'm going to go into as people mature in their careers, there's this big change from contributor to leader. And we'll go over a couple things that can help with that process, but it's a big sort of adjustment inside. I'll then go with some additional advice from some of their technical leaders I interviewed for this presentation. And then I'll kind of finish with some know thyself suggestions. There are about 10 to 11 more slides after I finish the presentations, and those are resource slides for you to have additional information to pursue your path. So when I leave you today, what I want you to understand about promotion paths is there are at large enough companies, there are well-established management and technical ladders. You get to choose. The expectations as you get a promotion are documented. They should be. You should be asking for that. You personally should be like, hey, what are my goals? What opportunities are there for me to do those goals? And then this is a regular discussion you should have with your manager and or your mentor. I'm not going to try to say all these names right now. You can probably read them. I'll talk to it a little bit more later. But since I'm going to be using quotes from these people throughout the presentation, I wanted you to see their faces. So one of the questions I asked these people was like, when did you realize there was a difference between management track and technical track? Because there's similarities because they're both you're becoming more of a leader, but there is a difference in emphasis. And John Cohn, I think, nailed it. He said, hey, management folks seem to get their thrills more from organizing people to achieve business outcomes. On the other side, tech leaders seem to get more thrills from helping folks create and execute technical projects and ideas. All right, I'm not going to try to lead the long list here, but in corporate promotion ladders, right, these big steps in the illustration, that's the next promotion. The ladder's going up, hey, here are the activities, here's what you need to be looking for. On the left and the right are some typical job titles that people have as they go up promotion ladders. They're different at different companies, and some companies have a much flatter organization. I did a summer job at Bell Labs many years ago, and it was like you were a member of technical staff or you were a distinguished member of technical staff on the technical side. And that was kind of about it. Maybe they had fellow, I don't know, but they kept it fairly short. But when I went to work at IBM, there were like, 7 or 8, technical tests there. So just a quick poll. Deanna's going to monitor the chat here is I want to understand, are you a student or are you employed? If you're a student, this is giving you maybe a heads up, but it'll make more sense if you're at a company. If you're at a company, hey, how big is your company? Because if your company is, say, less than 1,000, definitely less than 500, you're not going to necessarily have these well-established ladders. If the company is over 10,000, I'm sure that you do. In between, I don't have a good sense of that. I've either been in grad school or I've worked for really large corporations. Well, wait a minute or two there.
So, Anne, Patty is saying, I don't know if you can see it on chat, but Patty's at a large tech company with more than 100,000 employees. And Prabha is at also a large multinational with more than 150,000 employees. So you're talking very large.
Okay, good. Then they should have this. Okay. So, when people think of promotions and ladders, they keep thinking of, well, I got to go higher and higher and higher. And I want you to be thinking of it in terms of a four-legged stool. And let me take 2 slides to make a case. So the ladder rungs are your job titles, right? And you can move back and forth between management and technical ladder at the lower rungs. I've seen that successfully at my former company, Intel. You can also think about, hey, you don't have to stay in one department or division within your company to have movement. You may want to change. A technical job title description says specify key attributes that you are being assessed on. And I want you to think about these attributes as legs of a skill. And you ask for, hey, what's the technical ladder? What are the descriptions of skill sets? It's usually talked about a matrix of skills, and you'll have these big tables, and they'll have things to assess. And I have an excerpt from a description in the resource slides from my Intel days. But an example is, hey, demonstratable influence. Growing your influence to a wider circle of people, not just your team, but eventually your business group and your company. So let's take this ladder a little bit further is, hey, I want you to think about your career development as growing along each stool ladder, right? And most ladders have 3 to 4 main areas. So, the legs, that makes a lot of sense, right? And so if you think about these stools we have here, the higher the stool, right, you're expected to have a wider scope and influence with the projects within your organizations. But also what comes with that is greater responsibility and often ambiguity on the work. And we'll delve into that a little more further. Now, if you're only strong in one leg, right, you have one really big, long leg, well, the stool's going to wobble and you actually may fall off. So it's important to demonstrate competence in all these areas to have sort of a stable platform. Now, don't take this too literally. You don't have to be a rock star in all areas. You probably need to sell at least one and be viewed as very strong in that area. All right. So here's a diagram of common technical attributes. So this is from my experience at Intel, from informal information I got from Cisco system, the engineer at Cisco Systems and at IBM. Right. So there is, hey, what are you doing technically in terms of scope, complexity? Do you have more depth or if there's breadth and there's not one is good or the other? We have business acumen, which is, are you understanding the business? Is your product having impact? Are you helping with competitive advantages? Are you being strategic or contributing to the strategic vision? Under leadership, you can look at that in terms of how are you leading teams to execute and deliver product? What's your influence? How well do you work with teams? What's your teamwork aspect? And then finally, everyone has this, hey, growing others category, which can take many forms. From the role of being a sponsor of advocating to being more informal in terms of a role model, mentor, or doing more formal training. So let's first deal with technical expertise because, as Howard Heck stressed, it's the most important layer, right? And I'll paraphrase what he has here is that if you don't have this, you lack credibility, right? If people don't believe you know their stuff, they're not going to follow you. For you to have impact, that needs to be, very rock solid. How do you measure technical expertise? And there's a list of things here going from patents and publications, how successful has a technology been, how well you're recognized in the industry, open source assets where appropriate. But in some respects, it's, hey, how are you bringing financial success to the company, right? Your technology needs to impact the business that you're in. And that leads nicely to the next leg of the stool, business acumen, right? You need to comprehend what your company's business goals, strategies, and gaps are, right? Now, strategic, I'm going to give you some years here. Think about industry directions or technology directions 5 to 10 years down the line. At Enta, I worked on test methodology development, and we had, I called it little r, big D. We would try to think pathfinding, be ready for like 3 to 5 years, right? There were other people who were even going further. What kind of impact is the product you're working on or technology having on the business goals? How do businesses measure themselves? Well, what's gross margin versus profit? If you can reduce costs, you're increasing profit. What's the growth potential of this technology or product? How are you impacting the product lifecycle, or how are you taking the technology and making sure you intercept product lifecycle of key products? Competitive analysis, are you working on a product or technology that's going to open up brand new markets? So those are sort of the things to think about in terms of like, hey, how do I as a technologist impact the business? I'm going to take technical leadership, the leadership part, and put it into 2 slides. So one is more about how are you as a person in terms of technology, and you could say your upper management, like how are you at directions and decisions? This is the case. Leaders are proactive. They don't react. And if they do react, it's hopefully to a campfire, not a forest fire, right? But it's also about taking calculated risks. You have to make a decision often with incomplete data. And this is where you have to go, okay, I'm going to trust, based on what I know, this is the direction to go. I'm going to trust this, right? It's about providing solutions and moving forward. You can't go, well, I don't know enough yet. We can't go. You need to move forward. A quote that came up in one of the interview with Zoe was, people follow the most resourceful person in the room, from Annette Siegel, the Valiant Group, right? You want to be that resourceful person, perceived that way. The other thing is it's your job, right, to advise on Dropbox and said, I think there's a problem here. This is where being honest and offering alternatives. You can't just say that's wrong or shoot something down and not offer an alternative. And I won't read this quote right now, but Howard Heck, I think, articulated very well this role has, in terms of your impact on management. Okay, if you're a leader, you have teams of people. Often, they are not people who are directly in your management chain. In my line of work, I do semiconductor testing and designing for tests. I was indirect designers. I had to work with people across organizational boundaries, right? So I didn't have power or authority here. I had to do other things. So leading others, that assessment is how are you at motivating? How are you to set direction for the team? Being open, the ability to assign tasks or say, go check this out, right? The other part of being a leader with a team is you have to be able to advocate and acknowledge your team. You are their face to upper management, so you need to be able to advocating for what they need. In terms of acknowledging it, you should be considering, hey, most large companies have reward systems that are built in the organization. Hey, this team did an excellent job. They should be nominated for X. The thing that one of the people who reviewed this reminded me of, hey, you're leading a team, but you need to be clear to your management is, what is your role and your results within that team? Don't give all the credit to the team. And I thought John had a nice quote that went well with this area and says, hey, what's asked at his company is, what did he or she do to enable teams of technical people, right? The best leaders are enabling their team. Okay, so we have growing others in the form of a sponsor, mentor, and role model. And there's a lot of information about what those differences are. Formal way of growing others is, hey, I'm going to teach a class that's out there that's part of the company program. Or, hey, we need training on this topic. I'm going to develop that training. Or even participating in panels, conferences to inform others. Informal is, hey, being a role model. That's being visible. So others, you inspire others. A mentor is being available to coach, teach, and advise in a one-on-one situation normally. Sponsor is taking a more advocate role, recommending that, hey, I think Jane Smith would be excellent, going off and doing this task or leading this team. And then also, obviously, there's outreach to the community, especially technology companies are very big into education, be it K through 12 or talking to college students, but even just talking to the public. Now, a lot of times when people think mentoring, they're going, oh, I have to wait till I've been in my career for like 10 years. And that's not the case. And Tara Wheeler Van Black, in her book, High Tech Women, says, hey, as soon as you know something, you can mentor, because it's about helping others. So I don't know where we are on time, Deanna. I may be talking a little too fast. That's part of the East Coast of me. But if there are, we've talked about 4 general areas, and I want to know, are people who are listening, hey, is there one of those who want to just have a more informal chat in right now? We can do that for at least 5 minutes, and Deanna, you can watch the clock for us there. See. Chat.
Hi, this is Jerry. I'm looking at the chat and I'm seeing Prabha is saying taking initiative and technical leadership. Patty's looking for how to find a sponsor, and they're also looking for influencing team members.
Okay, so well, the first one from Prabha was taking initiative. Okay.
Wow.
So I think like any developing, you take small steps, right?
Right.
And initiative is not about, initiative is observing a situation and going, I think this needs to be done. And you may want to go to your manager and share this observation. It's like, hey, I'm looking at the situation and I'm seeing, hey, no one's looking over here, and I think it's important because of X, Y, Z. Can I take some time to go do that, right? And from my own career, this is my last 5-6 years at Intel. I had this idea about IP manufacturability, and I won't try to do that, but I did a little work on it. I had this idea, and my manager at the time said, hey, department head, he has interest, don't do that, put that aside. I'm like, okay, all right. And then about 3 or 4 years later, I was getting a new manager, and I talked to him, and I said, Derek, I have this idea. And he heard this. He said, hey, Ann, that sounds like that could be a strategic value. Why don't you go off and try to make that happen? Right now, I was a senior staff engineer, so I didn't need to be anything more. I went and did everything else, right? But I just said, hey, this is something interesting. What do you think? But he gave me the permission to go do that, right? So that's at a higher end, right? At a lower end, I'm trying to think of advantages from my own career, but I think it's something as simple as, hey, I see this need, what to do. I mean, and there's practicing it, doing it like just with your manager, and then working up to doing this. And, most corporations, a lot of business is conducted in the form of meetings, right? And you have to say, is this something I mentioned this meeting, or do you go to the work group meeting? You go to the leaders meeting afterwards, and that's where you have to assess the situation and say, do you do this now or later, right? So you don't have to approach your manager or anything. You're often in another, you're in work groups and people there, you can say, hey, I'm thinking that this needs to be done. I hope that helps.
The response on that from that is thanks. Yes, it explains everything.
Okay.
Great. And then Patty's question was how to find a sponsor.
That's a different question than finding a mentor, right?
Yes.
Though it's somewhat simpler. So I don't know the real I don't know a good answer for that. When I've heard executives at my former company, Intel, say, they had people sponsoring that they didn't even know that well, but the person saw them and liked them and whatever, right? So people can be sponsoring you without your direct knowledge. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind. Two things come to mind. And this may kind of correlate well between mentor and sponsor, but the quote from Tara Wheeler Van Black, was said in the context that she had a chapter on mentoring. And she said it was more about how to mentor people because she said in her experience, you were more likely to have a successful mentoring relationship if someone sought to help you because they saw you helping other people. That was her personal experience. And I think there's something to be said for that. I think making yourself visible and be seen as someone who is helping as well as moving things forward, people may start thinking, oh, this person can be, hey, I like how that person works. Maybe I should help give that person more opportunity. I don't know about the formalization of a sponsor, but I do think it's about demonstrating that it's about catching someone's attention, and I think the best way to do that is to be authentic and be competent and be visible. And that's the best I can do right now. It's not I don't think there's a lot about how do you find a sponsor out there, so. Okay, if there's nothing more, then let's proceed. On the influencer, I'm actually gonna have a little bit more about that in the other slides too. Okay.
Great. And Patty said, thank you, nicely said, by the way, on the sponsor and the mentor.
Okay. All right. So we're going to move into this change from contributor to leader. I got a lot of material here to cover. So I'm going to start off with this quote. 85% of your financial success is due to your personality and ability to communicate, negotiate, and lead. Shockingly, only 15% is due to technical knowledge. Now, I don't know where my alma mater, Carnegie Institute of Technology, got those numbers. And I think there's truth to it, but I want you to focus on the words communicate, negotiate, and lead, because those are going to help make you successful in this change. So we're going to cover working through others, extend your influence and work scope, how when you network with others helps you with the previous one. And then we're going to talk about just build underlying skills. So, working through others. As you climb up those rungs of the ladder, you start having responsibility for larger products. Guess what? That means you do less of the work. This is a big emotional, big switch. And the two quotes below from Joyce and Greg, articulate this well. And I won't try to read those on the presentation right now, right? But that change, all technical leaders struggle with as they go through. And so this switch is you have to start, you can accomplish working through others by start going, okay, I got to be delegating. I got to be partnering. I'm told that this is very common in software development. Is code partnering is a very common technique now. So one of the books I have in the backup, they talk about software tech leads. It's like, hey, I code partner because I still need to know what's going on in the code. Or just perform a really small portion of the technical part so you kind of keep your hands in. So you're always going to do some of the work at the lower rungs, but it's to accomplish larger products is you have to depend upon others. So let's move on to influence and about extending your influence, right? And so you can think about these as circles of influence, right? I have my group, I have my department, right? As you get wider, there's a bigger circle that you are influencing. Now, don't take this literally. When you grow your influence in the company, you're not influencing every single person in the company, but in your technical area, you have a wider influence within the people who work in that area in the company. Zoe Conroy had some really good comments about this, because we were talking about circles of influence, and she brought up this term constant outskilling. And she said, hey, the phrase often heard at Cisco is, what service am I offering, right? What do I do? What can I offer? Mm-hmm. And to describe outskilling is the ability to take your expertise from your group that you use in your group and apply it when working with sister organizations. Like how do what I know about I/O testing can help people in system validation. That's an example from my technical background. So the other thing is, hey, there's also expanding the work scope. When you're an individual contributor, your job is to just execute a task, right? That's your work. I'm going to go code this piece of work. I'm going to go design this circuit. As your work scope expands, you're going to plan a whole set of activities and then go execute. Now, you may still be doing all the work, or you may be, partnering with someone else, but now you start planning and executing. And then it becomes, hey, I'm going to define, what the work's going on and plan it. And then it becomes, as you get very higher up, it's like, I'm just setting the direction. Now, what happens as you expand your work scope is often the projects you're working on are much more complex, right? Whether it's because of the size of the project, or it could be the challenge of the technology. There's a lot more complexity going on. The other thing that often happens with that is, hey, there are higher levels of ambiguity. You're trying a new technology. No one knows it's going to work in this application. You're designing a new, metal line in a semiconductor process. Is this going to work, right? So there's a lot more uncertainty that you have to be able to cope with. Networking with others assists with your influence and work scope aspects, right? So you can think of this as spiraling. It kind of builds upon itself, right? And I just have a few suggestions here. So one, Paul Glenn in the Geek Leaders Handbook, he had this one section, early chapter said, here's the only career device you need as a software developer. And he bumbled it down to is think less about yourself and more about the people around you, right? In a sense, become the go-to person, be that reliable person. If you're going to say you do X, Y, Z, do X, Y, Z, right? It's about this collaboration, right? Because that's a way to build influence. You want to meet people outside your department. Most large companies have employee groups. They come in forms of related to national origin, religious, or even just, hey, we all go mountain biking together, right? So this is a way to meet other people in your company that you might meet someone in accounting, you might meet somewhere else, right? So if you have a question, you're like, hey, you can go ask them. You can learn more about the company. The other thing is, hey, to influence in work scope, this one probably is more for work scope, is, hey, attending presentations outside your immediate expertise, right? At Intel, the Intel Labs over the years would advertise, hey, someone's talking about, ethnography in the kitchens. Like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. How does that do with technology? Let me go learn, right? I like to cook, so it was like, that's cool. So take advantage of those opportunities. Often departments...
get off the internet?
What? Hello?
It's okay. Keep going. I think she might have taken herself off mute.
Okay.
Sorry.
And finally, I think there's a lot of opportunity to meet people outside your company and even people within your company by participating in professional societies. Like I'm a member of IEEE. A lot of cities have, Portland has all these technical meetups all over the place. If you're trying to learn Ruby on Rails or you want to meet Python people, that sort of place. I'm not a software developer, but I know open source projects are contributing there. It's another way to kind of grow your work scope and influence. And attending technical conferences. That's all things you can do to kind of grow in that area. So let's go to build underlying skills, right? And I have this puzzle piece because I say these are kind of the present there. And we got innovate, write, relate, listen, influence, and present. Now, if you're quick, you'll go, hey, half of those are all about communication, right? Listening, writing, and presenting. And Greg Taylor really emphasized this, and actually a fair number of people emphasize this that I talk with, and I totally agree with them, is that communication is extremely important skill to develop. And part of it is like, hey, you're working with others. I think Greg's context was to work on large projects, you need to be able to work well with others. And the ability to communicate is really critical. He said both writing and oral, right? And part of it is I had to communicate, hey, I've done X, Y, Z. But he also said, hey, and this is where the leadership part comes in. Hey, you want to communicate what you want to do, why you want to do it. And hey, why people in the room should help you get this done. And that's the movement from leadership into, hey, I'm going to present what I did, right? But now it's like, you start moving forward. Hey, I want to do this. And here's why. And here's why I think you should help me. Oops, went too fast. Increase team productivity by increasing relatedness, right? Relating to others is important, but also on a team, if they know each other better, they're going to work well together. And there's this Pichu Kuchu exercise that I hadn't heard of, but I've done some of the things for getting to know you, right? If people know something a little outside the immediate work environment, then making you more human, that's going to help. It's about likability. The other part of relating is, hey, you need to understand your customer and partner's viewpoint. You need to go from me and you to we, right? Because we're working together. It can't just be me versus you, right? That's adversarial. what you need to do is start to say, what do you recognize from the other person's point of view? And then you need to talk to them and listen for, what am I missing? What am I not understanding, right? The other part you can put under the relate sort of skill is, hey, you need to understand your management change viewpoint. They often measure success of a project differently than you. That kind of goes back to business acumen, but you need to, understand their viewpoint, know their concerns, have answers for them, or make sure you have activities going on to address their concerns. I think this is a great quote for the next skill. Diplomacy is the art of letting someone else have your way. So, influence. Right, so one of it we kind of addressed is you need to understand your partner's concern, because you need to start from there to influence them. The other skills that fall under influence is, hey, you need to practice what's called emotional intelligence. You need to acknowledge that, there's non-rational decision making, which may shock you when you think about it, because you're like, hey, I work at a technology company, things are data driven. But there's a lot of psychology research out there that shows, hey, how you word something, how things are presented, our fast heuristics will often kind of lead us in the wrong direction. And the other part is mastering influence science. And this is psychology. You can think about it in terms of sales, but there's a lot to be said for understanding how do you make people have your way. Okay. Whoops, what did I do there? Sorry for a second, something happened. Share screen. Okay, hold on a second. Let me go back. Share screen. Okay. All right, sorry about that.
It's working now.
Yeah, just a little video box was moving that to be on the slide. So innovate. You know what? Conflict contributes to innovation. Diverse opinions, right? That creates conflict. Hey, there's some differences here. Creativity is another aspect of innovate. Now, in thinking about conflict and diverse opinions, right? The industry data has been very clear that diverse ideas lead to better business results. Right? How do you get that? Well, you want to make sure everybody's in the same room talking. You want to have the stakeholders and expert present at the same time, right? When there is conflict, you're moving people out of their comfort zones. When you're creating, hey, I have a lot of different opinions, and that's where you have to be wary and making sure that you're setting up a situation where you can have discussions that are productive, right? As opposed to adversarial or like, no, my way is better, right? Part of this is conducting deeper discussions that integrate different and conflicting viewpoints. And this is where you have to promote a culture of listening versus I'm going to listen to I'm going to formulate an argument or response and be ready to interrupt as soon as they're done, as soon as they take a breath, right? So the only way to deal with those conflicting diverse opinions is to be open to that and also have a culture of, hey, let's take some risks. Are there some new techniques here? Do we borrow from one another? I didn't get a chance to really look up the research on creativity, but my friend John, who I interviewed, has some opinions about that, and I have a couple of his, he had a TED Talk a number of years ago about this, but he suggests keeping things fun and remembering how to play, because the research does show that you get more creative results. Okay, down. Why is it not going down? Okay, so this is a question to sort of, you can share in the chat is, name a person in your company or organization who has a skill that you admire And why don't you share with us what that skill is? Oh, it looks like we only have a few of us. Okay. Yeah, I think honesty is a great skill. I would agree with Dina about joyful attitude to challenge. My role model, when I was at IBM, Franco Motica was my hero, just his positive attitude and how to address things. And he had some kind of quote, I don't remember the exact words, but it was something to the effect, you're working today, you're trading a day of your life for, make sure you enjoy it, right? And it was sort of this trade-off for do what you like, but he definitely did. He was, my goal was to be as enthusiastic about my work 20 years down the line as he was. I think I achieved that. So, all right. So, let's go to the next slide. So we're kind of in the wrap up here, and I wanted to tell you about who the people I interviewed. John Cohn, who's a fellow at IBM, he and I went to Carnegie Mellon together for our PhD. Joyce Weiner is a senior staff engineer at Intel, and I met her because we both worked in semiconductor testing area. Greg Taylor is a retired Intel fellow, and I've actually known him since my first days at Intel. Zoe Conra is a test strategy lead manager at Cisco Systems, and I know her via the outside network. Howard Heck is a principal engineer at Intel, and I know him because I worked in I/O testing, and he worked on signal integrity for which deals with I/Os. And I am Meixner, and formerly a senior staff engineer at Intel. I'll paraphrase in some cases, but another advice from Greg Taylor was, when you're thinking about working with others in your networking, he said he once heard the phrase, you need to understand how your customer makes money. But he went and said, I interpret this more broadly as you need to understand what is important to those around you. Right? And that kind of goes back to some of the advice about knowing your customers, knowing their viewpoint. My advice is, hey, from a technology point of view, you work in this area because you enjoy it, and that you should pursue working with others who enjoy delivering compelling results. And also because you enjoy it, you should share your knowledge with others. John says, remember how to play. And he says, keep working with your hands. It really keeps your geek passion. And so John, is in the maker community, does things with LEDs. He's got, so he's working with your hands, right? And there's a lot of research about working with your hands. Accesses some other aspects of your brain. I knit. So there's usually something on my needles that I'm making. So I play with string and sticks. Zoe had some advice about, might address purpose in terms of initiative, but taking the risk and having the courage to make the decision or speak your mind or ask the question or for the resources needed. And part of that is the communication skills in particular in a manner cognizant of politics surrounding a project. Howard had some excellent advice about knowing yourself in the sense of, if you get bored, be in a place that you can easily shift, right, to new areas or role. If you like real open-ended, undefined, then go there. But if you're into very structured execution environment, go there, right? Know where you seem to thrive. And Joyce, I want to end with her advice is, hey, make sure your management is aligned with you having this technical career path, right? Make them understand there's a business benefit for you developing the skills and becoming a stronger technical leader. And she simply states, if they aren't in alignment with those goals, and you need to look elsewhere. Since this is Global Tech Women, I actually had a question in my interview process was, hey, were there any advantages or disadvantages of being a man or woman involved, right? Does gender matter? There are a couple people went back and said, I don't think it matters, or I don't want it to matter, why are we asking this? But what did come out, small sample size, and not even trying to address the well-known documented unconscious bias is, hey, there are some societal expectations about work-life balance that women may be impacted by more than others. There could be some other societal expectations inside, but that seemed to more come up. If you're a man, you're more likely to have a more supportive spouse who may have a less demanding career. Women tend to also marry, other technical people. It's true in the academic. So it's, who has more support at home sometimes. Being a woman, you kind of stick out. You're kind of easy. And Zoe said because she's British, or maybe she's got an accent that, she's the one with the accent, right? So she sticks out, and she says I agree with her. It's a double-edged sword. If you do really well, you're going to be remembered. If you don't do so well, it's remembered. So it's a mixed blessing. And then one of the men came back and said his observation is that there are differences in communication styles between men and women, that he feels sometimes that can be an obstacle. So I didn't put this in the resource list, but there are tons of books. There are lots of books out there, but a great introduction to sort of social linguistics and how you speak is Deborah and Tannen. All right, I'm going to finish with Know Thyself, and I don't know where we're coming up on a time here. Just about right. So there's more in the resource slides about this, but I think, except maybe I don't know if I did what I did for, I don't think I did Strength Finder in the backup, but it's a well-known book. So in knowing yourself, there's knowing what are you technically passionate about. Psychologically, where are you on the Myers-Briggs sort of personality spectrums that they assess? Emotional intelligence, and then StrengthsFinder 2.0. And I'll start with StrengthsFinder 2.0. And what I'll tell you is that when I had this done very late in my Intel career, I was surprised at how well. I realized it was one of the best descriptions of me and how I worked, and what those strengths were, and also what could frustrate me because of my strengths, right? And the thing is that you should be developing your strengths. You don't want to necessarily keep working what you're weak at, because then you're ignoring what you're already good at, right? You do need to understand your weaknesses, so that you make sure that if you're working in a team, you have someone on that team who complements your strengths and is stronger in the areas that you're not. A thing my friend John Aker reminded is like, hey, women tend to undersell and underestimate yourselves. So try not to do that. It's like, well, you're strong in an area. Well, don't play it down, right? Don't on that. You should continue education in any technical area. And there's lots of ways to do that. I just put a sampling down here. It's reading papers, classes, conferences, but keep fueling your technical interest. Comprehending your personality is good to know in terms of hey, what's the best way for you to network as an introvert, which may be different than as an extrovert, or what kind of a work environment do you have, or how do you interact in meetings, right? Are you a super planner person, or do you kind of go with the flow, right? Emotional intelligence is about sort of being awareness of situation in terms of people's emotions and how to mitigate that, and management of relationships. So to finish up, I want you to leave with, you need to assess your place and set your plans for growth, right? Where are you right now? And set 1 to 3 year goals. You can break those goals into actionable steps. And in the resource slides, I have a little one-page template, and I think we'll also upload that to the site as a separate file. Your goals goals and stuff, you should, and steps for those, right? You should review that with your mentor and your manager, right? To see, because then they'll know, hey, those are goals, and they'll see about, oh, Sally mentioned she wanted to have, go work with the Israeli team. Here's an opportunity. You be proactive about, hey, what's the budget for training this year? I want to do something. And then finally, is to don't forget to grow your networks out of your work, because broadening your viewpoints and opinions, what you're exposed to, is just good for your overall growth. And what I want to finish up with, remind you that, technical ladders lead to fun places, right? You are doing this because you're having fun. Thank you. I'm not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
I can. I'll stop. I'll stop the share.
So there's virtual clapping in the chat room.
Okay.
Everyone's thanking you. Does anyone have any last questions, comments? So we'll post a copy of this video up on the website, so it will be available for replay in about 15 minutes, as well as I'll post any documents you want to share with me, and I'll put those up on the website.
Do you want me to, I can send you the PowerPoint?
That would be fabulous. I can put everything up.
Would PDF be better than PowerPoint?
PDF would be better.
Okay, so I'll make a PDF of this presentation because it has all the resource slides, and I'll also, I have that, I don't know how PDF embedded in PDF does, so I'll also send that template as a separate slide.
Okay, yeah, if you want to just send it to me, I can see what I can do when I put it up on the website.
Okay, you can just, that sounds good. All right, well, I really enjoyed the opportunity to talk on this subject.
Yeah, sorry I had to step away. Someone decided to turn on a chainsaw right in the middle of your presentation, so I had to run out and deal with that.
All right.
All right, thanks everybody. We hope to see you at our next session, which will be at 12 o'clock Pacific, 3 o'clock Eastern, and then we have 4 hours of amazing talks from 12 to 4 p.m. Pacific. So I'm hoping you all will join us for those sessions. They're going to be fabulous.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Meeting.